I have always loved the smell of freshly cut grass on the soccer field. It is the first thing that has greeted me every morning for 23 years now. Even on the days when things are going down, that smell takes me back to when I was a player myself. God, it's been a long time. That April morning, I arrived at the stadium earlier than usual. The sun had barely begun to rise above the horizon, coloring the West Palm Beach sky a soft pink. Jimmy, our old gardener, was already finishing work on the field. He waved me over with his tattered cap, which he didn't seem to have changed since I first came to the clubhouse. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery," he shouted, drowning out the noise of the lawnmower. "Good morning to you too, Jimmy. How's your back?" "Better, sir. Those exercises you showed me really help." I nodded and headed toward my office. The training room was my second home, maybe even my first, considering how much time I spent here. The walls hung with pictures of the team from different years, the cups on the shelves, the tactical diagrams scattered across the desk. It created an atmosphere that made me feel truly alive. Dex, my assistant and best friend, showed up an hour later, holding 2 cups of coffee from our favorite coffee shop on the corner of Oliver Street. "Have you been up all night working on schematics again?" he asked, handing me my usual Americano. "The Miami Sharks defense is keeping me up. Their new center guard is a real headache. Dexter Holloway wasn't just my assistant. We had known each other since college, when we both dreamed of professional careers. A knee injury put an end to his dreams as a player, but couldn't tear soccer out of his heart. Now we were coaching the Palm Beach Lions together, and I couldn't imagine a better partner. "Lance, you think too much. Sometimes you just have to trust your gut." Dex crouched on the edge of my desk, looking over the schematic of the last game. "Intuition is good, but I prefer to be prepared for anything." The morning flew by. Practice went great. The guys gave it their all. I was especially pleased with young Tyler Ramirez, our new forward. At 22, he showed an understanding of the game that I have rarely seen even in more experienced players. After lunch, I was scheduled to meet with the club management. But 15 minutes before the meeting, the president called and postponed it until tomorrow. I decided to take advantage of the unexpectedly free time and stop by the house. Maybe even surprise Veronica and invite her for a late lunch. Veronica. I met her at a charity match 8 years ago. She was organizing the event, and I remember being amazed by her energy and ability to keep the most difficult situations under control. We married a year later, and those years were the happiest of my life. At least that's how it seemed to me until today. I parked my gray Ford in the driveway of our Spanish-style home. Veronica had insisted on buying it 3 years ago because of its high ceilings and spacious porch overlooking the garden. I liked the house too, although sometimes it seemed too big for 2 people. The front door was unlocked, which was odd in itself. Veronica was always very security conscious. From the kitchen came voices and the clinking of dishes. I heard my wife laugh, the kind of laughter I hadn't heard in a long time. "Rafe, you're impossible!" Her voice sounded playful and relaxed. I froze in place. Who was Rafe? Walking slowly through the living room, I stopped in the kitchen doorway. At our dining room table, where we usually had breakfast with Veronica, sat a tall man in his mid-40s. Dark hair with graying, expensive cashmere sweater. The confident posture of a man accustomed to feeling comfortable in any situation. He and Veronica sat too close together, it seemed to me, and in front of them were cups of tea and a plate of my wife's favorite blueberry pie. Veronica noticed me first. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she moved slightly away from her companion. "Lance, you're early today." She tried to smile, but I noticed her shoulders tense. "Meeting canceled." My voice sounded hoarse. "Would you mind introducing us?" The man stood up and held out his hand. "Rafe Kingsley, an old friend of Veronica's." I shook the outstretched hand, noting the firmness of the handshake and the expensive watch on his wrist. "Lance Montgomery, Veronica's husband." I emphasized the word husband on purpose. There was an awkward silence in the kitchen. Veronica fidgetily began gathering dishes from the table. "Rafe is passing through town and decided to visit some old friends," she began to explain without looking me in the eye. "We haven't seen each other in probably 10 years. 11, Rafe corrected her with a slight smile. "Since college graduation." I stared at them both, trying to catch something in their looks, their gestures, their intonations. Something elusive hung in the air, some understatement. "I hope I'm not interrupting your meeting," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Not at all. I was just about to leave." Rafe glanced at his expensive watch. "I have a meeting in an hour." He said goodbye, shook my hand once more, and kissed Veronica on the cheek. A little too close to the corner of her lips, I thought. Or was it a play of my imagination? When the front door closed, I turned to my wife. "So, how long have you two been dating? I mean, reconnecting?" Veronica finally looked me in the eye. "He called yesterday. Said he'd be in town for a week on business. I didn't think you'd mind." I silently made my way to the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of water. My throat felt dry. Of course I wouldn't. Why would I mind my wife being visited by old friends? But something inside me was already starting to doubt. Maybe it was the intuition of a coach used to reading his players' body language. Maybe it was just the paranoia of a tired man. The evening after the meeting with Rafe was unusually quiet. Veronica was fussing in the kitchen, preparing dinner, something she was doing a little too diligently. We usually ordered takeout on Tuesdays. It had become something of a tradition. But tonight, she decided to make my favorite lasagna. I sat in the living room, trying to concentrate on the tactical schemes for the upcoming match, but my thoughts kept returning to the afternoon scene. The clinking of a fork falling in the kitchen made me flinch. "Is everything okay?" I asked, not lifting my eyes from the papers. "Yeah, sweetie. Just awkward today. Honey." She hadn't called me that in months. Ever since she'd been promoted to senior manager at Star Entertainment, our relationship had become more businesslike. Two professionals living under the same roof, each with their own busy schedules and social circles. I put the charts aside and walked over to the bar. I poured myself a whiskey, just one finger, an important training session tomorrow. The ice clinked quietly against the glass, reminding me of Rafe stirring his tea with a spoon this afternoon. The tall tea glass was the same one from our wedding set. Veronica didn't usually reach for it for casual guests. "Tell me about Rafe," I said as casually as possible, taking a seat at the kitchen island. Veronica froze for a second, then continued chopping basil. "What's there to tell? We went to college together. He majored in business administration. I majored in event management, shared friends, shared parties." "You dated?" The knife stopped. Veronica looked up at me. "No, you didn't. We were just friends. He was dating my roommate at the time, Ashley." She went back to cooking, but I noticed her hands shaking slightly. "And what does he do now?" "He has a chain of restaurants on the East Coast. I think he's going to open a new one here in West Palm Beach. So he'd be in town for a while." That thought scratched unpleasantly somewhere inside. "And that's why he's decided to re-establish old ties?" I tried to keep my voice neutral, but Veronica tensed anyway. "Lance, please. He's really just an old friend. We haven't seen each other in years. People meet sometimes, socialize. It's normal." I remembered how I'd met Veronica. It was at a charity match to support a children's sports school. She was organizing the event and looked stunning in her blue dress. I remember her reprimanding a sloppy technician, and she had the same passion in her voice that I used to talk to the players before an important match. We were married a year later. It had been 8 years of absolute happiness. Or was it just me? Veronica's phone vibrated. She quickly glanced at the screen and flipped it display side down. She'd never done that before. At that moment, Dex called. "Lance, old buddy, how about we have dinner together Friday night? Jane's making her signature duck." Jane, Dex's wife, was an excellent cook. We often spent evenings together, two married couples who had known each other for years. Just a second. I covered the phone with my hand. "Veronica, is Friday night dinner at Dex and Jane's?" She visibly tensed. "Friday? I'm not sure I can make it. We have an important presentation on Saturday. Might have to stay late at work." "Sorry, friend," I said into the phone. "Not with us this time. Work stuff." "That's a shame. Well, maybe next time. By the way, how's your defense scheme going?" We talked for another 10 minutes about tactics and the upcoming match. Dex always had a way of distracting me from my heavy thoughts. After dinner, Veronica said she was tired and would go lie down. I stayed in the living room, trying to remember the last time we'd just sat together and watched a movie or talked about something not work-related. On the coffee table was Veronica's forgotten hairpin, a silver one with small sapphires. I'd given it to her for our 5th anniversary. She used to wear it all the time, but now I couldn't even remember the last time I'd seen her with it. A muffled voice came from the bedroom. Veronica was on the phone. I couldn't make out the words, only the intonation soft, almost purring. It was the way she used to talk to me. At night, I thought about Rafe, about his confident smile and his expensive watch, the way he looked at my wife, the way she laughed at his jokes. 11 years is a long time. People change. But some feelings, they say, never die. In the morning, Veronica got up earlier than usual. When I went down to the kitchen, she was already dressed for work. A dark blue suit, pearl earrings, high-heeled shoes. She looked stunning, and for some reason that alarmed me even more. "Do you have an important meeting today?" I asked, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Yeah, a presentation for a new client." She avoided looking me in the eye, checking something on her phone. "Good luck." I tried to kiss her cheek, but she was already heading for the door. "Thanks. Don't expect me for dinner. It'll be late tonight." The door closed, and I was alone in the kitchen where I'd caught her and Rafe yesterday. The cups had been washed and set out, but I could still see them, sitting too close, laughing at some shared joke. My phone vibrated. A message from Dex. "Vivaldi got injured at practice. Need a new plan for the match." Work. Work always got me through my problems. I finished my coffee and headed for the exit. At the door, I checked my wife's cell phone on the shared calendar. The presentation for the new client wasn't listed there. Something tightened in my chest, but I forced myself not to think about it. After all, she could have simply forgotten to put the meeting on the calendar, though in 8 years of marriage, that had never happened once. On the way to the stadium, I turned on the radio, trying to drown out the intrusive thoughts. The same song we danced to at our wedding was playing. I turned the radio off. A week had passed. 7 days filled with awkward silences at breakfast and Veronica's late returns. I plunged headfirst into work, spending more time on the practice field than usual. The players were already starting to joke that I was going to put a bed there. That morning, I lingered in my office watching videos of recent Miami Sharks games. It was about 11 on the clock when Dex knocked on the door. "Coffee?" He handed me a cup from our favorite coffee shop. "You're a lifesaver." I rubbed my eyes, tired from looking at the notes. Dex sat down on the edge of the table, looking at me intently. "What's going on with you lately, Lance? It's like you're not here." I sipped my coffee, trying to gather my thoughts. Dex had been my best friend for 20 years. It was hard to hide things from him. "Remember that guy I was telling you about? Veronica's friend from college? The one you caught at your house?" I nodded. "Something's not right here, Dex. I can feel it, but I can't explain it." At that moment, Maria, our receptionist, looked into the office. "Mr. Montgomery, there's a phone call for you. Mrs. Perez from Star Entertainment." Adriana Perez worked with Veronica. We'd seen each other a few times at corporate events. "Lance?" Adriana's voice sounded uncertain. "I'm sorry to bother you. I don't know if I should say this, but..." My heart beat faster. "What's wrong, Adriana?" "I just saw Veronica at the Blue Marlin. She was with a man. They looked very intimate." The Blue Marlin was one of the most expensive restaurants in town, not the kind of place where you set up business meetings in the middle of the day. "Thank you, Adriana." My voice sounded like it was coming from outside. Dex was still in the office, watching me anxiously. "Bad news?" I told him everything. About Rafe, about the change in Veronica's behavior, about Adriana's call. He listened in silence. Only his cheekbones were jaundiced. "You know," he finally said, "maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it really is a business meeting. At a restaurant where a glass of wine costs like a week's salary at lunchtime?" Dex shook his head. "What are you going to do?" I looked at my watch. "Right now we have practice, and then I'm going to go home and talk to my wife." The training went like a blur. I was mechanically giving instructions, but my thoughts were far away. Once I even called Tyler Ramirez by another man's name, which had never happened to me before. When I returned home, I found Veronica already there. She was sitting in the living room with her laptop on her lap, typing away at something. She was still wearing the same business suit she'd left in the morning, only she'd changed her shoes to homemade ballet flats. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to keep my voice sounding casual. "Normal. Lots of paperwork." She didn't even look up from the screen. "At the office?" Now she looked at me. "Yeah, sure. Where else?" I made my way to the kitchen, pulling a bottle of water out of the refrigerator. On the table was a dry cleaning receipt from yesterday. Veronica had had her black cocktail dress cleaned, the one she only wore for special occasions. "Honey," I called out back in the living room, "why don't we go out to dinner? The Blue Marlin, for instance? They say they have great food there." She froze for a split second, so briefly that if I hadn't been watching closely, I wouldn't have noticed. "Can't tonight. Gotta finish my report. Maybe another time." I sat down in the chair across from her. "That's odd, and I heard you were there this afternoon." Veronica slowly closed her laptop. "Who told you that? So it's true then, and you weren't there alone?" "Lance," she stood up, pulling her skirt down nervously. "It was a business meeting. Rafe is considering opening a restaurant here. He needs help with event management." "And that's why you lied to me?" "I didn't lie. She stammered. "I knew you'd take it the wrong way." A heavy silence hung in the room. It was beginning to get dark outside the window, and the shadows in the corners of the living room were growing thicker. "How many more meetings do you have scheduled with your business partner?" Veronica nervously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture I knew by heart. She always did that when she was nervous. "I don't know. It all depends on how the project goes." "The project," I repeated. "How long ago did it start?" "Lance, stop it!" She raised her voice. "You're acting like a husband whose wife lies about her seeing another man?" Her cell phone vibrated on the coffee table. I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen before she grabbed it. Rafe. "I need to take this. It's work-related." She quickly walked out onto the porch, closing the door behind her. I remained seated in the chair. My wife's muffled voice came from the veranda. She spoke softly, but her intonations were animated. I heard her laugh once. The same laugh I'd heard when I'd first caught her with Rafe. A text from Dex. "How are you? Need some company?" "Not tonight," I replied. "But thanks, friend." Veronica returned 10 minutes later. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, from the cool evening air or from the conversation. "It really was a work call," she said without looking at me. "Of course it was." I stood up. "I'm going to go for a walk." "Lance." "It's okay, Veronica. I just need some air." I walked down the streets of our neighborhood, past neat houses with trimmed lawns. I saw a married couple in one of the windows. They were cooking dinner together, laughing about something of their own. That's how Veronica and I were. When had things changed? The phone vibrated again, this time a message from Adriana. "Sorry to interrupt. Just thought you should know." I didn't respond. What was there to say? "Thank you for telling me my wife is having dinner with another man." I got home late. Veronica was asleep, or pretending to be. I lay on my side of the bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow is an important practice before the Miami Sharks game. Gotta focus on the job at hand. Need to think about the team, about tactics, about the upcoming game. But the picture in front of me was Veronica and Rafe at the Blue Marlin, leaning against each other over glasses of wine. And her laughter from the veranda, so familiar and so foreign at the same time. It was a cloudy morning. I woke to the sound of rain drumming on the roof, unusual for this time of year in West Palm Beach. Veronica had already left, leaving a note on the kitchen table. "Early meeting. See you tonight." I stared at that note while holding a cooling cup of coffee. She used to always add "love you" at the end or draw a little heart. Now it was just dry information, as if from a secretary to a boss. At work, I was in for a surprise. The club management decided to give the team 3 days off after Sunday's match. Normally, I would have been happy about the opportunity to spend time with my wife, but now this news only caused anxiety. 3 days alone with our reticence and suspicions. "Why don't you guys go somewhere?" Dex suggested over lunch. You have that beach house in Jupiter Beach, don't you? I wondered. I'd gotten the little beach house from my uncle 5 years ago. Veronica and I had spent our first summer there after we were married. A happy time filled with sun, sea, and love. You know, that's not a bad idea. In the evening, I cooked dinner, seafood pasta, Veronica's favorite dish, set the table, lit candles. She came back around 8, looking tired but also strangely excited. Smells delicious. She took off her shoes and walked into the kitchen. What's the occasion? Need an excuse to make dinner for your wife? She tensed slightly but smiled. Of course not. Over dinner, I talked about the weekend and suggested we go to Jupiter Beach. 3 days by the sea, just you and me, just like before. Veronica slowly spooned pasta onto her fork. I don't know, Lance. I have a lot of work to do, which you can't put off for 3 days. She looked up. Something akin to guilt flashed in her eyes. You're right. Let's go. I reached across the table and covered her palm with mine. She didn't pull her hand away, but she didn't respond to the touch either. What's happening to us, Veronica? What do you mean? You know what about. This distance between us. When did it come about? She set her fork aside. Lance, we both work hard. It's normal to feel tired sometimes. Fatigue or something else? At that moment, her phone vibrated. She cast a quick glance at the screen but didn't pick up. Not going to answer it? I asked. What if it's work-related? It can wait. She turned the phone off. You're right. We need this time together. After dinner, we sat on the veranda. The rain had stopped, but the air was still humid. Music was coming from somewhere. I think the neighbors were having a party. Remember our first summer in that cabin? I asked. You got burned the first day. She laughed softly. And you put some stinky ointment on me for the burns. I smelled like a drugstore. It helped, though. We were silent. Fireflies flickered in the darkness of the garden. Veronica. Yes? Are you happy with me? She didn't answer for a long time. Then she turned to me. Of course I am. We have a wonderful life. But something in her voice made me doubt the sincerity of those words. The next morning, I was getting ready for practice when I noticed a long, dark hair on the bathroom floor. I knew for sure it didn't belong to Veronica. She was blonde, perhaps from the cleaning lady. But Maria, who cleaned our house, was a redhead. At practice, I couldn't concentrate. Dex noticed my condition and took over some of the work. Did she agree to go? He asked during a break. Yes, but I'm not sure. About what? About everything, Dex. About everything. That evening, I started packing for the trip. In the closet, going through my shirts, I accidentally hit a rack of Veronica's clothes. Her purse, the one she rarely used, fell to the floor. A business card fell out of the purse. Rafe Kingsley, president of Kingsley Restaurant Group. On the back was a handwritten phone number and some sort of address. I was sitting on the bed holding that business card when Veronica returned. What's this? She asked, freezing in the bedroom doorway. You tell me. She quickly reached over and snatched the business card out of my hands. Are you going through my things? It fell out by accident, like that address on the back. Also by accident? It's the address of a supposed restaurant. Her voice shook. Why can't you just believe me? Because you're lying to me, Veronica. Lying about the meetings. Lying about the phone calls. I'm not lying, she was almost shouting. I'm just trying to run a business. At the Blue Marlin? In a black cocktail dress? She turned pale. Are you following me? No, but people see. People are talking. Veronica sank to the edge of the bed. I'm tired of these suspicions, Lance. I thought you trusted me. I thought I did too. We sat in silence. Outside the window, it was starting to rain again. Let's just go to the sea, I finally said. Let's forget about all this for 3 days. Just you and me. She nodded, but didn't look at me. Okay, let's give it a try. I walked out of the bedroom, leaving her alone. In the kitchen, I poured myself a whiskey, more than usual this time. In the reflection of the window, I saw my face, slim, with shadows under my eyes. When did I become like this? When did we become like this? My phone vibrated. A message from Dex. Sunday's match has been moved to tonight. Can you make it back? We will, I replied, though I was no longer sure this trip was even going to happen. Veronica's muffled voice came from the bedroom. She was on the phone again. I didn't want to listen. I really didn't. But I heard the end of the sentence. No, it's okay. I'll deal with it. Handle what, Veronica? Our marriage? My suspicions? Or something I don't even know about? I stepped out onto the veranda. The rain had intensified into a torrential downpour. This kind of weather is good for thinking, maybe too good. My thoughts swirled around the same thing. What am I missing? What's going on behind me? The drive to Jupiter Beach took a little over an hour. Veronica was silent the whole way, pretending to read work documents on her tablet. But I noticed her fingers twitching and her checking her phone every now and then, thinking I couldn't see. The cabin greeted us with the smell of salt and uninhabited space. Small, only 50 meters from the ocean, it was the same as it had been 5 years ago. Faded floral curtains, an old couch with worn upholstery, creaky floorboards on the veranda. Only there was more dust. We should air it out. Veronica opened the windows, letting in the sea air. I carried the bags into the bedroom, noting in passing how much stuff my wife had brought for a 3-day vacation. We used to be able to pack in 15 minutes, throwing only the essentials into the bag. Want to take a walk on the beach? I suggested, unpacking. Maybe later? I have some emails to answer. Work, of course. Always work. I walked out to the beach alone. The day was overcast and the beach was nearly empty. In the distance, I could see a group of surfers waiting for a wave. I walked along the water's edge, letting the cool waves wash over my bare feet, and thought about how happy we had once been here. I remembered our first summer in this cabin, how Veronica tried to learn to cook in the local small kitchen, how we had breakfast on the veranda, looking at the sunrise, how we made love to the sound of the surf. Where is it all now? When I returned an hour later, I found Veronica at her laptop. She quickly closed the lid when I entered. How was your walk? Chilly, but beautiful. I made my way to the kitchen, pulling a bottle of water out of the refrigerator. How about dinner at that restaurant on the pier? Remember it? In The Captain's Daughter? She smiled. Of course I remember it. Do they still serve that huge lobster there? Do we recognize it? The restaurant hadn't changed much over the years. The same nets on the walls, the same pictures of old fishing boats, the same gray-haired waiter, Joe, who seemed to have worked here forever. Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery, he exclaimed when he recognized us. How many years? How many winters? We were given our favorite table by the window. Veronica ordered white wine, I got a beer. For a minute it seemed like everything was back to normal. We even laughed at some of Joe's stupid jokes. Then her phone vibrated. Sorry, she got up from the table. This could be important. I watched her walk out onto the terrace of the restaurant, holding the phone to her ear. Even through the glass, I could see the change in her face. There was that special softness in her eyes that I remembered so well. She used to look at me that way. Veronica returned 10 minutes later. Sorry, work stuff. 9 o'clock on a Friday night? You know how it is in the entertainment industry. Yes, I did. Just as I knew that she had never before returned work calls during our rare dinners together. During the night, I woke up to the sound of the surf. Louder than usual, a storm must have been starting. The seat next to me was empty. I found Veronica on the veranda. She was sitting in an old rocking chair, wrapped in a plaid, typing something into her phone. Can't sleep? I asked, trying to make my voice sound casual. She flinched and quickly locked the screen. It's stuffy in the bedroom. Thought I'd get some air. I took a seat on the veranda steps. Clouds were gathering over the ocean, heralding a thunderstorm. Remember when we waited out that terrible storm here? That first summer? Of course, she laughed softly. You kept trying to board up the windows and I was sure the house would blow the hell out. But we made it through. Yeah, we did. There was a strange note in her voice, either sadness or regret. The next day was sunny. We had breakfast on the veranda. I made pancakes from my mother's recipe, as I had done every morning on our honeymoon. Veronica even ate too, even though she usually watched her figure. "Shall we go shopping?" she suggested after breakfast. "I want to buy a new swimsuit." We wandered through the little stores on the main street. Veronica tried on summer dresses and straw hats. I waited patiently by the fitting rooms. She stayed longer than usual in one of the stores, and I decided to walk down the street. And that's when I saw him. Rafe Kingsley was standing outside the cafe across the street, in a light linen suit, phone to his ear. I froze in place, not believing my eyes. What was he doing here, 2 hours away from West Palm Beach? When I blinked, he was gone. Had I imagined it? Or was he really here? "Lance," Veronica's voice brought me out of my daze. "What's wrong? It's like you saw a ghost." "No, it was just a vision." We had lunch at a small cafe on the waterfront. Veronica was animated, talking a lot about work, about future plans, but I couldn't get rid of the thought of Rafe. Was it him? And if so, was it an accident? After lunch, Veronica said she had a headache and went to lie down. I stayed on the beach, watching the kids playing and the couples walking along the water. I pulled out my phone and opened the picture from Rafe's business card that I'd secretly taken before I left. The address on the back was in Jupiter Beach. That evening, we had dinner again at the captain's daughter. Veronica seemed distracted, checking her cell phone often. Once, when a text came in, I noticed her hands trembling. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just work." During the night, a storm blew in. Lightning bolts lit up the ocean, turning it into a raging mass of black water. We lay in bed, listening to the thunder and whipping gusts of wind. "Scary?" I asked, remembering how afraid she had been of thunderstorms our first year here. "No," she answered after a pause. "Not anymore." I turned to her. Only a silhouette was visible in the darkness. "What's changed, Veronica?" "What do you mean?" "About everything. About us. About you." Lightning lit up the room, and for a moment I saw her face, confused, almost frightened. "People change, Lance. It's normal. But not like this. Not in 1 week." She sat up in bed. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. Ever since Rafe came along—" "Stop it!" she almost shouted. "Just stop it!" Thunder rumbled particularly close, making us both flinch. "I saw him today," I said quietly. "What?" "Rafe. In town. Outside a coffee shop." She was silent for so long I wondered if she'd fallen asleep. "You're imagining things," she finally said. "He can't be here." "Why?" Because he's in Miami, on business. And you know that because—" She rose abruptly from the bed. "I'm going downstairs. Need a drink of water." I could hear her coming down the stairs, opening the refrigerator, talking quietly on the phone, thinking the noise of the rain was drowning out her voice. In the morning, we packed our things in complete silence. Veronica said she had an important meeting on Monday to prepare for, and we should return early. As we were leaving, I noticed a black Mercedes on the next street, just like the one Rafe drove. There was no one behind the wheel. We drove home in silence. Veronica was pretending to work on her tablet again. And I thought about how our attempt at a fresh start had only made the crack between us deeper. Just before we entered West Palm Beach, she finally spoke. "Lance." "Yeah?" "Thanks for this trip. I know you meant well." There was something akin to regret in her voice. Or was I imagining it again? Monday started as usual with the smell of freshly cut grass on the practice field. But even that familiar ritual couldn't restore my sanity. After the weekend in Jupiter Beach, everything seemed unreal, as if I existed in two parallel worlds at the same time. "How was your weekend?" Dex asked, handing me a cup of coffee. I sipped my coffee, trying to collect my thoughts. You know how it is, the more you try to fix things, the more they fall apart. Dex sat down on the edge of my desk, looking at me intently. "What's wrong?" I told him about Rafe in Jupiter Beach, about Veronica's strange behavior, about the late-night phone conversations. "Maybe you really imagined it?" Dex tried to be rational, as always. "Maybe, but the address on his business card, he was in Jupiter Beach. The practice helped take my mind off things a little. I had the guys working up a sweat, especially the defensive combinations. Tyler Ramirez, our young forward, even joked that I was preparing them for a war, not a soccer game. If he only knew the war that was going on in my soul. After practice, I lingered in my office watching tapes of the last Miami Sharks game. In truth, I just didn't want to go home. Home was no longer a place where I could feel at peace. My phone vibrated a message from Veronica. Late tonight. Important presentation. I opened our shared calendar. No presentation was there. Lately, though, the calendar was less and less reflective of my wife's actual schedule. Let's go get a drink? Dex suggested, peeking into the office. Would Jane mind? She's at a friend's bachelorette party. She won't be back until tomorrow. We drove to O'Malley's, a small Irish pub where the local soccer fans gathered. Patrick, the bartender, had known us for years and always saved the best whiskey. The usual, gentlemen? He asked, wiping down the glasses. We settled down in the far corner where we could talk quietly. There was some kind of match on TV, but I wasn't even paying attention to who was playing. You know, I'm starting to doubt everything. Every word, every gesture, everything seems suspicious. Did you talk to her? Talk to her directly? I tried. She denies it, says I'm paranoid. At that moment, the front door of the pub opened and I saw Adriana Perez, Veronica's coworker. She noticed me too, and after hesitating for a second, she headed toward our table. Mr. Montgomery, may I sit down? I nodded. Dex introduced himself. Yeah. She nervously rubbed the strap of her purse. I think there's something you should know. What's that? There's no presentation today. Veronica left an hour ago with Mr. Kingsley. They were at the Palm Court restaurant. I felt Dex tense beside me. Are you sure? Adriana pulled out her phone. A friend of mine works there as a waitress. She sent me a picture. The picture showed Veronica and Rafe sitting at a table at the back of the room. She was saying something, gesturing emotionally. He was listening intently, putting his hand on the table next to her hand. Too close for a business conversation. When was this taken? About an hour ago. They were there for almost 2 hours. I finished my whiskey in one gulp. Thank you, Adriana. She stood up. I'm sorry if I'm prying. It's just, Veronica's been different lately, and not for the better. After she left, Dex and I were silent for a long time. What are you going to do? He finally asked. I don't know. I really don't know. I got home around 11. Veronica wasn't there yet. On the kitchen table was the unfinished morning coffee. She always forgot to put the cups away. Next to it was yesterday's Palm Beach Post with a story about a new restaurant opening in town. Rafe Kingsley's restaurant. I went up to the bedroom, opened my closet. The black cocktail dress was hanging there. She hadn't worn it today. But on the dressing table, I noticed a new perfume, not the one she usually wore. The bottle was half empty, though I'd never seen it before. In the bathroom, in the laundry basket, lay her blouse, the same one she'd left for work in this morning. The fabric gave off a light odor, a mixture of tobacco and some kind of men's perfume. Veronica didn't smoke. I was sitting in the darkness of the living room when I heard the sound of a car pulling up. The headlights slid down the walls and went out. The door slammed. One door. So she'd been brought in and left. The key in the lock turned almost silently. She always knew how to move quietly when she wanted to. Lance, are you awake? How was the presentation? A pause. Good. Just really tired. Is the food at Palm Court good? The pause was longer now. What? I said, how do you like the kitchen at Palm Court? They say they have a great chef. Veronica turned on the light. She was wearing a different blouse, dark blue, austere. Her hair was a little disheveled, her makeup slightly smudged. Are you following me? No, people see, people talk. What people, Lance? Who informs you of my every move? Don't change the subject. Where have you been? I told you, at the presentation. Stop lying. I didn't realize I'd raised my voice. Veronica flinched. Have you been drinking? Yes, I have been drinking, because my wife spends the evening with another man and then lies to my face. It was a business meeting. At a restaurant? At 8 o'clock at night? And he drives you home afterward? She turned pale. Did you see it? No, but you just confirmed it. Veronica sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. I'm tired of these interrogations, Lance, of your jealousy, of your suspicions. And I'm tired of the lies. The clock in the kitchen was ticking, an old clock from my mother. That sound always soothed me, but not today. Where's your blouse? I asked. What? The one you left in this morning. In the laundry basket. I spilled coffee on it. And that's why it smells like tobacco? She jumped up. You went through my stuff? This is our house, Veronica. Our stuff. Or is it not anymore? She headed for the stairs. I'm not discussing this. You're drunk and that's why it's better to talk to Rafe. He's the best conversationalist? Veronica stopped in the middle of the stairs. Stop it. I heard her go upstairs as the bedroom door closed. Then the muffled sound of a phone call. That night I slept in the guest room. Or rather, I tried to sleep. The picture from Palm Court was in front of my eyes. Rafe's hand so close to my wife's hand. Her gaze fixed on him. In the morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. Gone to meet a client in Miami. I'll be back late. The morning started with a headache. I woke up in the guest room where I'd spent a restless night, and the first thing I saw was a picture on the wall. Me and Veronica at some reception 3 years ago. Her smile, sincere and open, now seemed something distant, almost unreal. Everything in the kitchen was the same as it had been that evening. An unfinished glass of whiskey, a newspaper with a note about a new restaurant, a note from Veronica. I turned on the coffee maker, an old Italian machine we'd bought in our first year of marriage. It made a familiar hissing sound, but even that familiar sound no longer brought comfort. Dex called as I was about to go out. How are you? I'm fine. You know, I've been thinking, remember Tom from Stadium Security? He has a friend in... No, I interrupted him. No private investigators. Then why don't we just talk to him? He has access to the parking lot cameras. I wondered. The parking lot outside the Star Entertainment office was just across the street from our stadium. Okay, talk to him. At practice, I was distracted. I mixed up the schemes twice, called Ramirez by someone else's name once. The guys exchanged puzzled looks. It had never happened to me before. During a break, Dex took me aside. Tom can show me the tapes at lunch. You want to come? I nodded, feeling nausea rise to my throat. Did I really want to see this? The security office was located in the basement of the stadium. Tom, a heavy-set man in his early 50s, greeted us with professional calm. What period are we looking at? The last 2 weeks, Dex replied. Black and white footage of a parking lot flashed on the screen. There was Veronica's familiar Lexus. She'd arrive in the morning, leave in the evening. It's business as usual. And then... Stop! My voice trailed off. Go back! Tom scrolled through the tape. A black Mercedes pulls up to the office at lunchtime. Veronica gets into the car. 2 hours later, the car returns. That was last Thursday, Tom commented. How many times? What? How many times has that Mercedes shown up in 2 weeks? Tom flipped through the records. 7 times. Sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes in the evening. I felt my fingers go numb. 7 times. 7 meetings she hadn't told me about. And yesterday. Tom switched to yesterday's tape. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Veronica leaves the office, gets into a black Mercedes. 8 p.m. The car brings her back to her Lexus. Thanks, Tom. Dex puts a hand on my shoulder. Let's go. We walked outside. The sun was blinding my eyes, but I felt like there was darkness all around. Lance. Don't, Dex. I canceled my evening workout, for the first time in 5 years. Drove home, even though I knew Veronica was in Miami. Or not in Miami? The house greeted me with an oppressive silence. I made my way to the bedroom, opened her closet. New dresses I'd never seen before, shoes, handbags. When did she buy all this stuff? There was a bottle of new perfume on the dressing table. I held it up to my nose, the same scent I'd smelled at the Blue Marlin when I'd been there last week. so she'd been there more than once. In the drawer of my dresser, I found an unfamiliar business card from a hotel in Miami. On the back was a room number written in hurried handwriting. Her hands began to tremble. The phone rang. Adriana's. Mr. Montgomery. Veronica's not in Miami. I know. She and Mr. Kingsley were just at the Ocean Club. A friend of mine. Thank you, Adriana. I appreciate your help. I sat on the edge of the bed, our bed where we'd woken up together for 8 years. On the bedside table was our wedding picture. I turned it face down. The phone rang again, this time Dex. Lance, are you home? Yeah. Don't do anything stupid. What stupid thing, Dex? What the hell kind of stupid things can I do? I'll be right there. Don't. I need to be alone. I went down to the kitchen, poured a whiskey. My hands were still shaking, and some of the liquid spilled onto the countertop. Veronica always scolded when I left glass marks on the marble surface. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a message from her. Getting held up in Miami. Don't expect me for dinner. I stared at those words. Every letter. Every dot it was all a lie. Outside the window, the rain began to fall. The drops drummed on the glass, creating some kind of crazy rhythm. I remembered how we liked to sit on the veranda in the rain, covered with a plaid, drinking hot tea and making plans for the future. Where is that future now? The front door opened around 9 o'clock. I was sitting in the dark living room, and Veronica didn't notice me right away. How was Miami? I asked when she turned on the light. She flinched. Jesus, Lance, you scared me. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your business day. She froze in place, still holding her purse. What do you mean? How's the Ocean Club? Still serving great oysters? Veronica turned pale. Have you been following me? No, people see. People are talking. And I just listen. Lance. 7 times, Veronica. In 2 weeks, you've gotten into his car 7 times. She put her purse down. Did you look at the security footage? What was I supposed to do? Wait for you to confess on your own? It's not what you think. No? I stood up, walking over to her. What am I supposed to think? That my wife is seeing another man lying to me, hiding. We're discussing business. At a hotel in Miami? I pulled out a business card. In room 612? She tried to snatch the card. You went through my stuff. This is our house, our bedroom, our life. At least that's what I thought. Veronica backed up against the wall. You've been drinking. Yes. Because my wife is sleeping with another man and I can't even... The sound of a slap echoed around the room. How dare you? Her voice trembled. How dare you accuse me of... Of what? Of the truth? We stood opposite each other, strangers in a once common house. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, turning into a torrential downpour. I'm leaving. She grabbed her purse. Where to? To his place? Veronica stopped at the door. You know what the worst part is, Lance? You've gotten so caught up in your suspicions that you've stopped seeing reality. Reality? I grinned bitterly. The reality is that my wife is seeing another man. The reality is that you lie to me every day. The reality is... Enough! She covered her ears with her hands. Just enough! The door slammed. I could hear her car start, the tires rustling on the wet pavement. The phone vibrated. Dex. Did she leave? Yeah. Do you want me to come over? No, I need to think. I poured another whiskey. Outside the window, lightning cut through the sky, and for a moment, the whole world became blindingly bright. Then it went dark again. I spent a sleepless night in the living room, going over every moment of the last few weeks. The empty whiskey glass was on the coffee table, next to our wedding picture, which I'd brought from the bedroom for some reason. Young, happy faces, sincere smiles. Veronica in her white dress, she'd spent so long picking it out, and then almost missed the ceremony because her car broke down. It was beginning to lighten outside the window. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a damp stuffiness. Where had she spent the night? At a friend's house? At a hotel? With him? Her phone was silent, no calls, no messages. Only the red light on the answering machine on the house phone blinked in the semi-darkness. 2 missed calls, one from Dex, the other. No caller ID. The doorbell rang around 7 in the morning. I opened the door without even looking through the peephole. Who else could be here this early? Veronica stood on the doorstep, pale, with disheveled hair, wearing the same dress as yesterday. "May I come in?" I silently stepped aside. She walked into the living room, stopped by the fireplace, looking at the pictures on the shelf. "Do you remember this day?" She held up a snapshot from our honeymoon. "You got so sunburned on the beach you couldn't sleep properly for a week. Why are you here, Veronica?" She put the picture back down, turned to me. "To talk, a real talk." I sank into the chair. "About what? About your business meetings? About your trips to Miami? Or about your time at the Ocean Club? Lance, please." Her voice shook. "Let me explain." "Explain what? That my wife is sleeping with another man?" "I'm not sleeping with him." There was a heavy pause. Somewhere in the street, a dog barked, reminding me of how we wanted to get a puppy in the first year of marriage, but kept putting it off. Then work, then moving, then renovations. Then what is it, Veronica? What does it all mean? She sat down on the couch, clutching her purse in her hands like a lifeline. I did meet with Rafe. At first it was really business meetings. He wanted to open a restaurant. He needed help organizing events. And then, she took a deep breath. Then things got complicated. He started talking about the past, about college, about how he never stopped thinking about me. I felt anger rising inside. And you? I don't know, Lance. I really don't. It's like an obsession of some kind. Old memories, feelings that seem to have died long ago. But not dead? She shook her head. I thought they were dead. I was sure of it. And then he showed up and things got so confusing. So confusing that you started lying to me? I was afraid. Her voice was barely audible. Afraid of your reaction. Afraid of ruining what we had. It was. What? What we had, Veronica. Because now... I stood up, walked to the window. Right now I don't even know who you are. Outside the window, the city was waking up. People were hurrying to work. Dogs were walking with their owners. The letter carrier was delivering the morning mail. A normal morning of a normal day. Only in our house, it was as if time had stopped. "I didn't sleep with him, Lance," she repeated. "I swear to you. But, but, but he says he loves me, that he's always loved me, that for these 11 years he's thought of nothing but me." I turned to her sharply. "And you? Have you thought about him all these years too?" "No, I mean, sometimes I remembered, but not so," she stammered. "Everything changed when he reappeared. He became so persistent." "Insistent?" Veronica stood up, started pacing the room nervously. "At first it was just meetings, talking. Then he started calling constantly, sending messages, showing up everywhere I went." "In Jupiter Beach?" She paused. "Yeah. He was following me. Found out about the cabin. Drove there. So I wasn't imagining things. No, he was really there and it scared me." I looked at her, confused, scared, like I'd never seen her before. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid you'd do something, I don't know, something irreparable." "And what you've been doing all these weeks isn't irreparable?" She walked over to me and tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Lance, please, I know I messed up. I know I betrayed your trust. But right now I'm scared." "Scared?" "He won't leave me alone. He's watching my every move, yesterday when I left. He was waiting for me outside a friend's house. Said we were meant for each other, that I should be with him." I felt my insides clench with anger. "And that's why you went out with him? Going to hotels? Lied to me?" I tried to keep it under control. I thought if I went out with him, talked to him, explained to him, he'd understand. But it just kept getting worse. At that moment, her phone vibrated. She flinched, looking at the screen. "Him?" Veronica nodded. "He's been calling all night. I turned my phone off, but..." "Give it to me." "What?" "The phone. Give me the phone. She handed me the receiver. Rafe's name and picture popped up on the screen. He was smiling at the camera, confident, successful. We need to talk. I pressed the answer button. Lance, no! But it was too late. Veronica? Rafe's voice was hoarse, tired. Finally, I've been up all night. It's not Veronica. A pause. Ah, Mr. Montgomery, what a surprise. Stop calling my wife. He laughed softly. Your wife? Are you sure she still wants to be your wife? I felt Veronica grab my hand. Please don't. Listen to me carefully. My voice became icy. If you go near her one more time, if you ever call her again. Then what? He interrupted. What will you do, Mr. Head Coach? Drive me to my death on the soccer field? No, I'll just break your jaw. Laughter again. Ask Veronica what she wants. Ask her who she thinks about at night. I clicked off. My hands were shaking. What did he say? Veronica asked quietly. Never mind. We stood in the middle of the living room, two people who had once sworn to be together for better and for worse. What was left of those vows? I love you, Lance, she said suddenly. In spite of everything, I really love you. And him? She turned away to the window. I don't know. Maybe a part of me will always remember what happened in college. But right now, I just want it all to be over. I'll help you, I said after a long pause. I'll help you end it. But then, I know, she nodded. Then we'll have to decide what to do with us. Outside the window, it had fully dawned. The new day brought with it a new reality as well. A reality in which nothing would ever be the same again. The day was overcast, but sweltering. I sat in my office at the stadium, looking out at the empty practice field. In 3 hours, thousands of fans would be here for the big game of the season against the Miami Sharks. In the meantime, it was quiet, with only Jimmy in the far corner of the field checking the markings. Dex entered without knocking, set 2 cups of coffee on the table. Are you sure you want to do this? Is there a choice? He shook his head. When? After the match. He'll be waiting at O'Malley's. Dex sat down across from him. Do you want me to come with you? No, that's my business. Veronica called around noon. A week had passed since that morning's conversation. She was staying at a friend's house, me in an empty house, amidst pictures of a happy life that was in the past. He agreed to meet. Her voice sounded tired. Where? At O'Malley's. Said he wanted to talk man to man. I grinned. How noble of him. Lance, be careful. He's not himself these last few days. And when has he been himself? A pause. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. What can I say? The match was 2 hours away. I was reviewing the latest training notes, making notes, but my thoughts kept returning to the upcoming meeting. What am I going to say to the man who ruined my marriage? What would he say to me? The locker room was slowly filling up with players. Tyler Ramirez, our young forward, looked unaccustomedly serious. Coach, are you okay? Sure. Focus on the game. I looked at these guys. Young, full of energy, sure that everything in life is simple and straightforward. Had I ever been like that? 15 minutes before kickoff came a text from Rafe. I'm expecting you at 9. We have a lot to discuss. I deleted the message without replying. The match started as usual. The referee's whistle, the fans shouting, the ball hitting the turf. I stood at the edge of the pitch, shouting instructions, but part of me was somewhere far away. We won the first half, 2-0. At halftime, Dex tried to say something about tactics, but I just nodded. Veronica's face was in front of me as she talked about Rafe's persecution, his obsession, his fear. The second half was a blur. We won, 3-1. The team cheered and hugged, and I looked at the clock. 8:30. Great game, Coach. Tyler clapped me on the shoulder. Thanks, kid. You did good today. The locker room was loud. A win over the season's biggest rival was worth celebrating. I said a few words to the team, praised the game, and left for my office. Dex was waiting by the door. Last chance to change my mind. No. Then good luck. O'Malley's on a Friday night was usually packed, but tonight, for some reason, it was unaccustomedly quiet. Patrick, behind the counter, nodded at me as if he knew why I'd come. Rafe was sitting in the far corner, an untouched glass of whiskey in front of him. When he saw me, he smiled, the same confident smile of a successful man. "Mr. Montgomery, congratulations on your victory." I sat down across from him without responding to the greeting. "What do you want?" "Straight to the point?" He sipped his whiskey. "Good. I want Veronica. She's my wife." "Technically, yes, but we both know her heart belongs to me. Always has." I felt my fists clench. "You don't know anything about her." "Really?" He leaned forward. "I know how she laughs at stupid jokes. I know she always orders a caramel latte even though she tells everyone she only drinks black coffee. I know she has a small scar on her left wrist. She cut herself when she was cooking dinner in college." "Stop it." "What? You don't like to hear that?" He smiled again. "Do you know why she married you? Because I didn't show up for our last meeting. Because I was scared then. But now I'm here and I'm not scared anymore. She doesn't want to see you. She's just confused. She needs time. She needs you to leave her alone." His smile disappeared. "Is that what she said?" "She said you're stalking her, that you're obsessed." "Obsessed?" He laughed. "I love her." "Is that obsession?" "Love doesn't make people afraid. Love doesn't destroy lives." Ray finished his whiskey in one gulp. "You know the funny thing? She never loved you the way she loved me. All those years she just played the role of the model wife of a successful coach. And on the inside she was always mine." I stood up. "Listen to me carefully. You're going to stop calling her. You're going to stop following her. You're going to stop showing up in her life." "Or else what?" "Otherwise, the next conversation won't be so polite." He stood up as well. "Threatening me? Seriously? You think I'm afraid of some—" "I think you're a coward," I interrupted him. "A coward who couldn't make it 11 years ago, and now you're trying to ruin someone else's life because you couldn't build your own." His face contorted. Get out of town, Rafe. Just get out." I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard his voice. "This isn't over. It is the end." I turned around. "Because if I ever see you near her again, you won't be helped by your money or your connections. That's a promise." The night air was damp from the recent rain. I got in the car, but I was in no hurry to start the engine. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Veronica. I got home at midnight. There was an envelope in the mailbox. Divorce papers. Veronica had decided to file them after all. I entered the empty house, turned on the light in the living room. From the walls looked our photos, a love story that had come to an end. I didn't take them down, let them hang, as a reminder that there had once been happiness here. A week after my conversation with Rafe, Veronica came home to pick up the last of her things. I was sitting in my office watching a workout video when I heard the sound of her keys in the lock. Such a familiar sound. It used to mean coming home, but now it was goodbye. "Lance?" She stopped in the office doorway. "Can I talk to you?" I turned off my laptop. "Sure." We walked to the living room, the place where we had been happily together so many times. Veronica sat down in her favorite chair. I remained standing by the fireplace. "Rafe's gone," she said quietly. "For good." "I know. Maybe now we could—" "No, Veronica." She raised her eyes to me. Tears glistened in them. "Why? I told you that I loved you, that it was a mistake. It's not about Rafe." I shook my head. "Or rather, it's not just about him." "What is it about?" "It's about trust, respect, and all the things you ruined in more than a week and more than a month. It started much earlier. It's just that we both didn't want to see it." She stood up, walking over to me. "We can fix this. Start over." "You can't start over, Veronica. You can't pretend it never happened. Every time I look at you, I'll remember your lies. Every time you stay late at work, I'll think, I'll never again." "That's not the point." I pulled away from her touch. "The point is that we're no longer the same people who once fell in love. Maybe it's for the best that it's all revealed now." She let out an intermittent sigh. "So this is the end then?" "It's a new beginning, for each of us." I really loved you, Lance. I know you did, and I did love you. But sometimes love isn't enough. She nodded, wiping away her tears. I signed the papers. They're in the car. Good. We stood in silence, listening to the ticking of the old clock, the same one I'd inherited from my mother. How many evenings had we spent listening to that sound, making plans for a future that were never meant to come true? I'll get my things and leave, she finally said. Sure. Already at the door, she turned around. You know, we could have been happy. We were happy, Veronica. It's just that time has passed. The door closed. I stood at the window, watching her walk to her car. The beautiful woman in the blue dress I had once loved more than life. Now she was just a part of my past. My phone vibrated, a message from Dex. How'd it go? Fine, I replied. I'll see you at practice tomorrow. I looked at my reflection in the window. The tired face of a man who'd lost something important, but maybe finally found freedom. Yes, I wrote. Tomorrow is a big day. Gotta get the team ready for the next match.